Welcome to The Blueprint. I'm your host, Michael Delavella. Today we are speaking with our good friend Marko Vovk, best-selling author Marko Vovk. We are going to talk to him today about his follow-up to his, was it a New York Times bestseller?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
To fix your toxic home and live longer.
Yes,
it's basically a follow-up book.
Yeah,
Mark.
I think so.
I would say so.
I first want to thank you, for having me back here. We had a
love
great
you.
time last time we did this.
We did.
And so I really appreciate you having me here. And, I hope we can cover some good stuff today and enlighten our listeners.
Yes.
Teach them a few different things.
I think I think we will.
And I was going to say, to answer your question, yes, it is kind of a follow-up book. It has some new stuff in it, and I removed some stuff. The old book wasn't an old book. It was 2 years of work, and it was 40 years of stories incorporated into the book. You fix it your toxic home. So it had a lot of stories, and they're good stories.
Oh, they're fantastic stories.
But I took them out of this book. So this is more kind of like boom, 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 tip, tip, boom, boom. So and we've added a few things and taken out a few things.
I agree. It's basically, here's, for lack of a better term, here's the blueprint to fix your toxic home if you want to follow these things. Marko, you're pretty much retired from doing inspections. Are you still doing one?
I've been doing them for 43 years. And when I got in this business, there's like, 2 home inspectors.
Isn't that crazy, huh?
So I went through the whole the whole game of it. And so I am, in my 60s now. I still do inspections, not a lot. I have all my old clients and their kids want them, so I do them. But I'm not out there pounding on doors. I mean, I've been doing a lot of other things, and basically writing some books, and I do a lot of gardening, and I do a lot of internet consulting where people call me because they have problems in their houses. So I have a service all over the internet where you call Marko with a question, and it's usually people call me with major house problems that they've had 50 people try to figure out. And I've done this. I've seen every one of them, and so I listen to them. They send me some pictures, and 20 minutes, we solve their problem. It's amazing some of the crazy calls I get. I should write a book on that. But it's kind of fun, 20 minutes. I only bill them for like 20 minutes, but I usually sometimes spend an hour. But I didn't mean to go off topic.
No, you're not off topic.
So I'm not really retired, like in that sense. I'm not going in 20 different basement crawl spaces a week and climbing up roofs. Yes, no, I'm not doing that.
Were you the original forensic inspector in the area?
Well, I think I kind of invented it.
I agree with you.
Because, back then it was just, we had back then, and I think you were working back then maybe, but there's like 2 old home inspectors, okay? And 3, and then Jim Nemmel still jumped in there, and then I jumped in there, and Jim Jagger, and there was like 8 of us, and now what? There was like 200. Now I don't think there's as many today.
Well, there's a lot of I don't know if I'd call them a franchise. Some of them could be franchises.
Oh, there's a lot more multiple inspection firms where they have like 5 or 6, and it's just the way business is. It's good business practice.
Well, everything has changed and grown. Yeah. I mean, think about the real estate industry way back then. That you probably would remember every real estate agent like I would now today.
No.
God, every day there's a new one coming into the business.
It's amazing.
Amazing.
But the forensic part, your question was people would have these weird problems. And, I'm an engineer, right? And so I was always into figuring stuff out. And so like, my siding's melting. What's going on? And then we replaced the siding. This happened here locally. And it was probably 20 years ago. They replaced the siding, and then it's melting again. And they replaced it again. And finally they hired me. The builders couldn't figure it out. And I went there and started looking at it. I'm not going to say the builders, but they started building houses kind of close together. And back then they used to put windows on the sides of the homes. And the windows were the low E glass windows just happened to come out. And I'm looking at those windows, and I'm looking at the siding, and I'm like looking at the sun and the orientation of the house. And I'm like, the sun from the neighbor's house is reflecting off these windows and melting this guy's siding. And it was crazy. So I looked at it, and I did some projections, and sure enough, And so, I came up with that. And then, of course, I taught that. I did seminars around the country. And one of the seminars was called Forensic Inspections.
No kidding.
Yeah. And so that was like some of the things, just like the black spots on the siding ended up being Sparabolus fungi. People call me up. They're like, oh, I got these black spots. This is 30 years ago. And I'm like, black spots. And they had a lawsuit. And I was an expert witness on this one. And it was a stucco house, brand new stucco house, synthetic stucco. The stuff that went bad, right? Remember that? That's a whole other issue. And so these spots were on the house. And I'm like, what's these spots from? And I'm looking at the mulch. And sure enough, I'm like, this is from the mulch, Sparabolus fungi. I looked it up. And sure enough, it'll shoot at 10,000th of a horsepower, a globular mass of tar, which is the spore, and hit the house on it. If you don't wash it off, it's stuck. So they want to sue. They start trying to blame the builder for it. And here it was the landscaper. Then they want to sue the landscaper, saying he gave them old mulch. Because when mulch is 3 to 4 years old, that's what happens to it. And so that was another one of these forensic things we figured out. If you have mulch that's 3 to 4 years old and you wet it, it's going to create Sparabolus fungi. And you're going to have black spots on your house. And they don't wash off.
Tell me what this exactly looks like, because I know that I see this quite a bit.
They're little pins, little pin tops.
Pin tops in the mulch.
No.
On the siding.
Oh yeah.
Little are they black pin tops?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I see this. As a matter of fact, I have it on my siding. I
More
know
and
I
more.
do.
Everyone's got it.
I think everybody's got it.
It's more and more because back when initially 30 years ago, it wasn't, people weren't doing as much mulching and we had gardeners, but it got crazy. Now you got you go to the street, there's nobody home, no cars, but 5 vans and all these people running around cutting the grass, and that's all you see now, right? And so people are buying the mulch and they have the different color. We don't even get into the colored mulch. That's all poison stuff, killing frogs and stuff. But more and more mulch. And then if they didn't get new mulch, the old mulch would cause us. It would be after, it deteriorated and started to decompose. And it would cause these pods, like little round flowers. And you see them. And then what happens is they open up and all of a sudden, poof, 10,000 horsepower is the power of one of these pods. It'll spray cars. It'll spray the siding, And so these forensic, I can talk all day on samples of things I figured out. And I'm not, it's kind of, you think about you did it. Nah, maybe not. Simultaneously, other people could be figuring out the same stuff, because it's a big world. And we're not the only ones with these problems. So, but I'm saying I did find a lot of stuff out. Just to let you know the reason of the name of the book.
Please.
Make Your Home Healthy Again. It wasn't political. It was because you have to remember, long time ago, and I think we talked about this in our other interview, but we'll go fast. The houses were breathed more. They were made of real materials, stone, real wood,
Plywood floors, plywood siding.
And we had so many people in the homes, and it breathed, and then we tightened them up a bit. But what happened is, in the last 10 years, it got expensive. So, people would keep their parents at home. So more parents are in a home, and they have a pet, and the other people have a pet. And then all of a sudden that flu came around, COVID, and all of a sudden the kids stayed home because they'd have to go to college. It was all remote, and they moved in. And then they got degrees, and, a lot of these degrees aren't the greatest degrees, so now they're living back at home with mom and dad with their pets. So the reason we have to make our homes healthy again is because they became unhealthy in the last 10 or so, 15 years. More people moved in. We've tightened them up. We're cooking more. We're creating more CO2, more CO maybe. We have a lot more humidity, condensation. The pets are salivating, and their skin is getting on the carpet. So the dust mites, the asthma rates are going up. 20% of all kids today got asthma. Okay, adults is 9%. It's crazy, and then we started using more chemicals, and we don't open the windows because we have air conditioning, and so more people, more pets, more breeding, more cooking, less fresh air, more, and then of course we believe in efficiency, right? And we have homes that are tighter, So there's no exchanges going on. We don't balance our heating systems. And so they're getting sicker, and we're getting more pollutants. And we're trapping pollutants in our homes, especially cleaning. Because now there's more people, we got to clean more. And a dog peed, so now we're spraying chemicals on the carpet in a tight house. That's all contributing to this massive plume. And so that's why I came up with the name. We need to make our homes healthy again.
But there's so many things in a home that contribute to this. I mean, there's really
Absolutely.
so many things. So could we touch on, again, I don't want to ruin the book is a must read. So I don't want you to give everything. But if you, as I reading this, I'm going through my house saying, and you know, we're all at fault. Nobody, I don't think anybody could do everything. But the most important things that you can do to make your house healthy, what would you say they are? And does it go by the year? Would you say that it really makes a difference if I have a home built a year ago, just moved in, or an older home? Would you vary what should be done on the time the home was built?
Okay. Every era has an issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the earlier eras, we would have a lot more lead, a lot more asbestos, and friable asbestos, and then
Foundations were not done correctly.
Yeah, they leaks, and I get the mold, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then and then we tighten it up a bit, and then we start having outgassing VOCs from the carpets and all the furniture that we'd put in, and then later we tighten it up even more. And we didn't have air, so then we're getting water and more, and the mold comes back, but differently now. So we talk about each one, but to answer your question, a couple things to make your home healthy again is you have to first realize, what am I living in? What's my house? How many people? And if you got 10 cats and 3 dogs, and you're living in 1,200 square feet, it's going to be kind of difficult to make your home healthy. So there's a few rules that basic rules. You can't have 100 people living in a one-bedroom apartment. Mm-hmm. And I'm not against pets or anything, because people need pets. They soothe, they make people happy and all that. But maybe we don't need 10 of them, all these rescue. I've gone to houses where my clients call me, they're sick, and I walk in and they got like 50 plug-in air fresheners, because the house smells like cat urine, and there's like 9 animals in the house. And like, and you're sick, really? And you can see dog hair on the beds and stuff. And so there's some rules. You got to think about what you live in. And then there's other rules. Like, some people over clean their homes. What do you clean your house with? Start reading the labels. I'll go to people's houses and I'll look under the sinks, and they're like, house with 5 bathrooms, can of bleach, Windex. It's like the same stuff. And you're like, what? This is pure poison. So they're cleaning their homes, thinking they're clean, right? Like a fresh car, a new car smell, it's clean. Mm-hmm. Fresh car, hey, nothing fresh about it. And so the over cleaning is a problem. So you have to look at what you're doing in your house as cleaning. And then, you got to look at like how you're heating and cooling and your water. Where's your water coming from? That's another thing. People today, they don't realize it, but, municipality, the water is supposedly filtered, but of course it's got chemicals in it. The fluorides, and it's got the chlorine. I mean, in the middle of the night, take a swig of water from your tap. It almost tastes like you're drinking water in a swimming pool. They're adding so much more now, and they keep raising the rate. So you got to look at what you're drinking and the water. I would be drinking city water, and I wouldn't be drinking water out of bottles either, and that's a whole other issue, the bottle, the plastic. But you could have filtration and think about the water you're drinking. Then, so you want to look at your sleeping conditions too. How do you sleep? Sleeping is so important, and it's in the book where it talks about your room.
Yeah, I want you can touch on it, but that's what I was looking for. I want you to.
Okay.
But I want you to finish your topic, and then I want to hit on that.
So you need to have a room that's dark, a room that's minimal, has minimal electromagnetic fields, or let's just call it electrosmog. Yeah, because your brain knows this. Those little red lights you see from all your stuff, the blue lights, the little that's all causing disturbance to your brain and your sleeping rhythms and your pineal gland, and like your pineal gland needs to rest because it needs to produce melatonin and things in other types of curing type chemicals in your body that kills free radicals. Your body has free radicals. These are poisonous things that hurt our immune system. And, you go out one day and you get in the elevator, somebody sneezes, you get the cold. Well, how come everybody else didn't get the cold? Well, your immune system is down. You got it. Well, sleeping is pretty important. So you got to have a dark room. You can't have noise. And you can't be sleeping on like fake stuff like man-made blankets, things like that. You want to have things that are natural, wools and cottons. You want to make sure your mattress has a cover on it.
So talk about a grounding sheet.
Grounding's a whole. Here's the thing with the grounding. Grounding's that's a people don't know about. There's books on this stuff.
It's funny you brought that up because it's the first time I've heard you ever talk about that. But I have heard a lot more health gurus talk about sleeping on a ground. I think it's called a grounding sheet or a grounding blanket or a grounding. But that is now like gaining a lot of traction. And walking barefoot in your yard.
Yeah, absolutely. Think about it. The Indians, they're pretty much barefoot. All the people back, all the Egyptians and all those people, they must have known something. Well, the reason you want to ground yourself, first of all, you have a normal amount of voltage in your body because that's how electrical, very low, okay, and milliamps. And what happens is throughout the day, you walk with your Nikes and your rubber soles, and you walk by machines and equipment. And if your house is poorly wired, let's say your sub panels, your neutrals, and your grounds are intermingling on your main panel, now you're creating major distortion and dirty voltage in your walls. And so you're getting harmonics. Well, anyways, your body picks that up. And all of a sudden it grabs it. And then you go past a couple of motors, you pick it up. You get in the elevator, you pick it up. And so your body is building up voltage all day long. And you keep building it up, and then you go home and you put on some rubber slippers. And in the morning you put on some rubber shoes. Now you're on your fourth day, and you've not even grounded yourself, and your voltage keeps building up. And as the voltage in your body, and I'm not a doctor. I am not a doctor. I don't want people to think I am. This is just from a lot of research that I've done. And so then when that happens, your immune system crashes. And it doesn't crash. It doesn't produce. You start breaking down, so you become more susceptible. So, like during COVID, do you remember all the people in the high-rise buildings in New York were all getting sick, right?
I remember hearing it, but I didn't live it.
Well, they're all over the world, and so these people are in these high-rise buildings wearing tennis shoes, and there's literally 100,000 miles of wiring in these buildings, and they're all producing harmonics and dirty voltage, and then they're sleeping with their phone chargers next to their bed.
And you're not a fan of that.
No, and their alarm clocks and their chargers, and they're just, and then you get in the elevator, and then they weren't allowed out of the building because, you had to stay home, right? And so people were just getting whacked on voltage. And then somebody would sneeze in an elevator, the whole building would get sick. And so sleeping is very important to be, and I got a chapter in my book on it, and you don't have to buy my book to read that. You could actually look stuff up if you want. I'm sure that AI will tell you everything you need to do. You got to be careful with AI. You really have to ask. It's going to tell you what it wants to tell you. So keep fighting AI and keep asking the questions, and eventually you'll get the truth out of AI. So you got to know how to deal with AI. But you can look this stuff up, and the problem with people are we work too much, we don't sleep enough, and when we do sleep, we don't sleep right. I mean, there's how many people watch TV all night because they can't fall asleep because they need it.
I'm one of them.
Not good. Good.
My problem is if I can't fall asleep, I'll get on the phone and I'll check social media stuff.
Oh, you doing this?
I'm down the rabbit hole.
You blab.
And then I'm wide awake and I can't go to.
I do it too.
Yeah, I think everybody does. It's my guilty pleasure, and I'm wide awake and I can't fall asleep, and my phone sits right by my bed. And even if it's on vibrate or silence, you get a light that
phone
goes
could
up.
be very well keeping you up.
Oh God, it's
your brain and your pineal gland knows if you've got a cell phone or a charger. It knows it will not produce melatonin. It knows. And I like I said, I'm not a doctor, and I do believe a lot of holistic medicine. And some of these people live to be 100 years old. Okay, so I'm not going to argue with people that are 100 years old.
But But it's funny though. I one thing that I have been down the rabbit hole is that a grounding sheet, a grounding blanket, something I don't have. It's fascinating to me. It makes a lot of sense. I think, gosh, I don't know if you know who Dana White. He's a huge fan of that. That's part of one of his daily things is he grounds himself.
You know, I actually practiced this myself about, I'm going to say 15 to 18 years ago. I took a ground rod, took it in my basement, 8-footer. And I couldn't pound it because it was 8 feet because the basement wasn't 8. So I had to cut it to 6 feet. And I pounded it down 4 feet right in my basement in Lakewood. Then I took a ground wire and ran it up through the ducts. Then I took it up through the ducts, behind underneath the carpet and into my bed. And then what I did is I connected it to a copper-type blanket. It was a copper cloth, which I had in the bed. I would just touch it. Plus, I also added a, I'm going to call it a frequency cancellation system where I took metal and I kind of created a mat and put it between my two mattresses because this is crazy. Mattresses with springs are not. You're not going to find a lot of this, okay? But they do produce a wavelength, especially if you have frequencies in your home. So now you're sleeping on coils, and by the way, I don't know if we talked about this. I got hired by a mattress company to study this. Okay.
Didn't you do a study about breast cancer and was it?
Oh no, I don't want to say that makes me a doctor. I did. I had a baby mattress company hire me, and they had a mattress that they were sending out to California. I'm going to say this is 10, 12 years ago, and so they complained that the mattress was, that the mattress, the springs in the mattress were causing magnetism. Okay. And, just so you know, you ever go camping? You ever see those $60 compasses? They're like on a rope.
Yeah.
They're nice ones.
Yeah.
Take one of those to your mattress and stick it next to your bed springs. It'll go bing. You'll be like, really? Really? And that just tell you that they're magnetized. Well, anyways, so they hired me, to make a long story short. So he hired me. It went on for about a year, and he kept giving me money and bring me updates. And then finally, he cut me off, paid me a bunch of money, and kind of gagged me. I've never heard from him ever since again because I did find some things out. And I found out that I got kicked out of furniture stores. I'd go in with my gauges, and I bought like $5,000-$6,000 worth of gauges, just crazy stuff. And they're like, "What's this guy doing?" And like, get out of here. I got booted out of a couple of these furniture stores here for like bringing gauges into the store to check magnetism of their furniture and their beds. Well, anyways, I found out that, and then I went to the guy's factory, and he says, "Come to my factory." And I found out that as he was coiling the springs, he was magnetizing them. Every spring was magnetized as it went through the machine. And then he would put them, and he was trying to separate them so they weren't touching, but it didn't matter. Because when I went to showroom, the gauge still shows they're all magnetized. And, well, anyways, the bottom line was, and we got a lot to talk about, so we're not going to just get into that. The bottom line was when I said, "Your springs are magnetized," that was the end of our relationship. I mean, he paid me a bunch of money, asked me for all my reports, didn't want a final report at all. And then I found out later he got rid of doing springs.
But
he switched to something.
Are springs going away in general today?
Yes. Because
so there could be a lot to this. But that was older mattresses. They were all springs.
The mattress factories know this. They know this, okay? This is not by accident that you don't see springs in mattresses as much anymore. Believe me, they know this. It never got out. And if they can get out off the hump, then class action law. You could just imagine if this actually came out there, it'd be insane. But anyways,
well, I mean, if you go through everything in this book, there's so many things that there's lawsuits on that could happen that could lead to sickness if all this was studied and if you do believe a lot of this stuff, which you bring up so many good points. Could you tell me about, like, you live in an older home?
Yes.
Right? Like 100-year-old home?
Yeah, easy.
What did you change about your house to make it healthy?
You know how they say the painter's got the peeling paint on his house? I'm a
Because you
little
had
bit
to
like
have
that. I'm a little bit like that.
Okay.
But I did do a few things. First, before I had children, I knew I was going to have a family, but I had it, and I didn't have any children. But when I rehabbed it, I got rid of the lead. First thing, I got rid of all the windows because I knew that was going to be a friction issue. The basement leaked. I had old stone. I'm like, how am I going to fix this? Well, it wasn't leaking that bad, so I did the interior waterproofing system. Okay, it was the simplest, easiest thing to do, and my basement hasn't leaked since then. Okay,
Do you run a dehumidifier?
Of course, I run a dehumidifier. That everyone should be running one of those. I decided to get rid of carpets. Okay?
No carpets.
Well, yeah, there's one carpet because the wife has to have the carpet. It matches that all that crazy stuff. Yeah, I have one carpet, but we replace it every 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
And so and we buy good carpets, and there's not enough. We also check if they outgas before we buy them. And then we did we think safety. The other safety things we did. Made sure it had fans, exhaust fans, to get the moisture out of the bathrooms.
Are they being vented
Yeah,
out
the ones
even
in
an old house?
In the bath, no. I in the bathrooms, I made them vent out. I drill holes.
Okay.
The kitchen, no. Yeah, microwave still goes in, but it's not like it's on all the time. I think, so the lead was a big issue. I had some asbestos, but not much. And I encapsulated some of that. Some safety items. Just normal safety things. I made sure I had grounded GFIs, the normal stuff. Other than that, the older houses, not as much to worry about because they leak, they breathe,
You like
they
the
dry.
material that they're made up with, and
Yeah.
they're not as tight. You are not a fan, and I will be shocked if you tell me. Do you have a humidifier on your furnace?
Oh no.
No, not.
That was one of my forensic findings. And I'm telling you, I think I found this. This is my thing back 30 years ago. And I don't know if you remember Jim Roby. This could be Stereotech. He was the guy that was cleaning up mold back in the days.
Yes, I know the name.
He was a really good friend of mine. Rest in peace, Jim. His son is still in the business. But before he got in the business, he couldn't believe that I would go to – and the place I found it at was in Twinsburg in Solon. And those houses we won't get into the dynamics and engineering of the homes, but it was that era home that was just perfect. It was like, it was the perfect storm for this. And it was also the time where they were really pushing humidifiers. So all these homes, were not really, they were tight, but not as tight. There's 80s homes, 70, 80, 90s homes. And so they would turn on a humidifier. And then they never knew about what was called thermal bypass. Okay, thermal bypass is a hole that goes in your attic. You want your attic to be cold, and you want your house to be warm. So the attic has to be cold. But the minute you have holes like recessed can lights, pull down stairs, house fans, attic accesses that aren't weather stripped, and then the heating systems weren't balanced, so they didn't have maybe cold air returns in all the bedrooms. So you close the bedroom, and the room become pressurized, hot air going in the attic, melt the snow, you get an ice dam. But also ice dams was one thing, but the other thing was if you had humidity, and it was like you would not need a lot of humidity. 40% humidity would destroy an attic in cold weather climate zones like here where we live in Cleveland. So it'd be ice, snow on the roof, and then moist air would come up and would just condensate.
On the windows.
Not in the windows, no, in the attic.
In the attic.
Because it would go through the attic access and a pull down and a house fan. And back then, the recessed lights had big holes. And, it would go up through any penetration, like your stack penetration, your fireplace, whatever didn't have that moist air will go in your attic. And the grains of moisture then would condensate, usually on the north side. Because the north side, the sun comes up, east to south. And so it's about 5 degrees colder. So it's always mold on the north side first, everywhere. And so the condensation would hit, which is not a big deal, basically rain in your attic. And then it would just get sucked into the wood. And then cladosporium mold would take over. And then some houses I go in attics to be raining. Sometimes you could smell it. People say, my house is leaking. It's a roof leak. I go up there, it's their attic sheeting. And it's their humidifiers blasting away in the basement. And so it took me a while to figure out ventless heaters and humidifiers were the main cause of this. So then I started telling people to stop that. And all of a sudden, the mold stopped. the condensation stopped. And my buddy Jimmy started a mold company, and that's all he did for a whole decade was go to Twinsburg and Solon and homes of that era, cleaning mold in the attics.
I recall several times where we would be on an inspection together, and you'd go into the basement, and you'd come up, and you didn't want to alarm the people, but you would say, "There's going to be mold in the attic here, and these windows the sashes are going to be rotted." Mm-hmm. And I'd be like, "This guy's crazy," and son of a bitch.
I'll let you
every time.
I'll let you in on a little secret.
Go ahead.
I pull out of my car. I look at the roof on the north side, and all of a sudden I would see the roof shingles, a little bit of overlap, 4-foot sections or 8-foot sections, okay? Or I'd see some nail pops or unhappy faces. That's when the shingles. And I look at the age of the home, 1982, and I look at the 2-story house, okay? And I'm like, mold in the attic, I know it. Should I tell them now? Or should I just do the inspection?
Oh, that's it. I'd be like, Marko, there's not going to be.
Well, sometimes I told.
Or there'd be a new roof. There's a new roof. There's a new,
But you don't know, right? That's different. Then you have to look and see.
Right.
But sometimes I saw it, and I'm like, oh, let's just go upstairs. Let's do the attic. Oh, there's the mold. Boom, deal dead. I'm just like, okay, I didn't make no money on this deal, which is okay. It's not always about money. And then, but what happened was, it was like I got in trouble with a lot of realtors for that. I mean, didn't even do the inspection. It was already done, and so I quit that. I just said, let me just go
do the inspection.
I could be wrong, but a lot of times you could see it on the outside. You see it from the roofing. And like you said, we have a lot of hail damage today. So you go down the street and everyone's got a new roof. Okay, you're not going to be able to tell. You're going to have to go in the attic.
But the misconception is I have a new roof. Okay, well, that's great. I just got a new roof. The roofers don't go in your attic to check what kind of ventilation is going on in there. So that's and today I think attic mold is so common. I want to go back on this dehumidifier thing because I have a dehumidifier that I don't use very often. But here's
dehumidifier.
I have a humidifier.
Yeah, okay.
My bad. I have a humidifier that I have not really used, or if I do, it's on very low. But here's what I see in the winter. I definitely get a lot more settling on some doors may not shut. Skin's definitely drier, but when I turn that humidity on, the doors will shut perfectly well. It seems like anything that was a little crack here and there will go back to normal. So you don't think that outweighs the other?
Okay. You have to look at the type of home to begin with. So you in newer homes, built in 2000 and up, they're built a little different, okay? So and also, if the homes are too dry. Now, I understand if it gets too dry and you start shocking yourself because you hit like 20%, that's a whole nother issue is static electricity, right? But you start shocking yourself because you shouldn't have a metal plate on your light switch anyways. But if you did in the old days, yes, you get shocked. Okay, you need more humidity. Okay, that'd be at 20%. You're gonna start feeling it, and the humidity is going to change. In the summer, you could have 80% humidity. It's not going to be a problem because warm air holds more moisture. But when it's 20 degrees and you've got 36% humidity in your house, that's too much. You're going to get condensation. So in your case, you're talking about expansion and contraction. Mm-hmm. So when you add grains of moisture to the air in your environment, it's going to absorb it. Wood's going to absorb, and it's going to come out, right? So it's going to shrink and expand. So sometimes now your doors could become loose and tight because of that. Usually they become, if it's too much humidity, the doors don't close. They're too tight. And if there's not enough humidity, they don't close because they stay open because of the dynamics of the house changes with humidity. Cracks, on the other hand, will do the same. So if it shrinks, like a real problem is like, who are those guys? The guys that go around and heat your house up to kill bed bugs. They heat up your whole house, okay? And that's okay because it kills everything. It kills the mice, the spiders. I mean, you want to kill every parasite bug in your house, do that. But it also heats up the house and pulls the moisture out. And so when those guys leave, sometimes there's some new cracks because it's sucked in the moisture. Eventually they'll come back. So a lot of times the crack you're talking about opens and closes, door gets tighter or looser. Hey, it's okay.
It's okay to leave it.
Yeah.
Because it's going to change.
Yeah. But too much, then you break the point, and all of a sudden, too much humidity, you start getting bugs, and if you've got conditions desirable for dust mites, a whole other problem. And then and you have your molds and your fungi and things like that. And so that becomes, but not enough is also a problem, static electricity, that gets into the body, electrical burden and all that. That's kind of like we touched on that a little bit. But I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you did. So what I use as a gauge is when it's super cold out and the furnace is running, and I start, I know it's dry and my nose is a little dry and my hands start splitting, I'll turn up that a little bit. But when it's starting to rain on the inside of it's like a steam room and my windows, just dial it back. But I haven't done a lot of it, and the reason I went away from it is because of all the windows sashes that I've seen on very expensive, allegedly windows that you got to replace all your windows. What's shocking to me is the amount of people that I meet and I work for that don't open up their windows. No. They never open the windows up. Oh. And you can ask the question, but I've never opened up the windows. I have air conditioning. Isn't that one of the worst, the easiest thing and the best thing you can do to fix the quality of air in your home?
That's a plus, yes and no. And I'll answer both of those questions. But I do want to say, back to your original question, see, you're one of those people that are cognizant and understand your humidifier. Mm-hmm. And so you know how to use it. Okay, you're like the 1%, or let's say 5%. The other 95%,
you let it rip.
They don't even know what the thing is. Oh, the humidifier, they don't even know what the thing is. Oh, it's a humidifier and a dehumidifier. It's amazing how people just don't know. So, yes, for you to have a humidifier on your furnace is okay because you know how to use it.
Have you ever seen when people, and I know you have, what am I saying? This is a silly question. But when people have a humidifier and they use it and we know that it's caused problem and mold and they've never changed the filter, I mean, that's a disaster because usually everyone I've ever dealt with, those filters are so gross and they should be changed at least once a year.
They don't. And you know what else? It's the same thing with the evaporator coil and the pan inside your furnace. Nobody cleans that. I mean, you got all kind of I mean, if you knew what was growing in those things, and then you turn on your air conditioner, you're breathing all that stuff. You wonder why people sneeze when the furnace kicks on, or why people get sick. And back to the air conditioner, your initial question, or the other question, air conditioners are good because they do dehumidify your house. Unfortunately, sometimes they're not good. Let's say you bought a brand new house, okay? Brand new house. Well, they're not using wood. They're using what I call was wood. Was wood means like particle board and TGIs and that kind of stuff where you take wood and they put chemicals into it, formaldehydes and whatever. And that stuff outgasses, okay? And so you got this new house with all the paint. And the other problem with new houses is there's so much water in the house from all the paints and the drywall mud, and it's still in the foundations, that you could run the air conditioner, but you're not going to be able to outgas. You'll be breathing that. So your best bet is to open the windows on days where the humidity is low, and on days where the humidity is high, run the air conditioner. You do that for a couple of years in a new house, you're right on. And then later, run your air conditioner. It's okay. The air conditioner, I get it. Okay, it's easy. You don't have to open windows. And people today like it cool. They want to live in the same kind of temperature. They can't deal with cold. They can't deal with sweating. So I get it. Okay, we just like comfort. I mean, people buy cars that have heated steering wheels. Okay, I mean, seriously, heated steering wheels.
Makes your hands feel good if you have arthritis.
That's where you come to, you know. And so it's okay, you know. On a new house, I would say no, because you want it to outgas.
Okay.
And you want to clean up so you're not breathing that volatile organic compounds. As far as people not opening windows, a problem happens is then the home inspector comes in 10 years later and he can't open the windows. And they're all full of like spiders and all that stuff. And sometimes they get tight. People don't know it. Sometimes they're rotted. They don't know it, you know, because they don't open them.
They don't open them.
If you open them, you see if they're rotting. You know, the Pella windows are rotting out, the Pro lines, right? And if you didn't open your windows, you wouldn't know until you sold the house. And all of a sudden, the home inspector, like, oh my God, I have a $40,000 problem. Yeah, you do. A humidifier can cause a $40,000 problem. You know, you wake up in the winter and you come down the steps and you see condensation on your windows. You screwed up. You screwed up. Period. You had too much humidity. Your humidifier was on. It got really cold that night.
It's going to do so
and
much
that water
damage.
runs down and it gets into the wood. And how many times do you think you can get away with that before that window rots out or that mechanism no longer functions adequately?
You talk about a couple things in here that I have never done, and I don't. And I want to ask you if you've ever done this. When you waterproofed your basement on the inside, did you add a sump pump on the inside?
Oh, here we go. Okay. I don't want to answer that question, but let me answer a hypothetical answer.
Okay.
Well, when you add a sub pump, that's great. Okay. But then you have to discharge it, right? Mm-hmm. That's great too. Only problem is people, that waterproofing people and the plumbers use the wrong lids. So now they put a waterproofing system connected to this pipe that's a couple 100 feet long, whatever, with holes in it, in a wet dirt. High vapor pressure goes to low vapor pressure. So now you've created a humidifier by putting in a sub pump without a proper
without
cover.
the proper. So do you think that crock needs to be
sealed? Yes, with plexiglass. And Ari,
I thought you only had to do that with radon.
Well, Ari does radon. You know,
Yes.
Ari for radon survey system.
He
does a lot. I always, you know, for decades, I would say call Ari, and he'd come up there and he'd sell you a sealed lid, a radon lid, because that keeps so it does two things. It keeps the radon out, it keeps the moisture out.
Sure.
Now, some people would not use a sub pump. What they would do is you're not real allowed to do this, but they would find a sewer. They would trap the sewer and then connect that to the sewer, the sanitary. Or if there's an underground storm line they could tap into. And then you don't need a sub pump because if it leaks, it goes into that.
Into there.
Yeah. But it has to be trapped. But the problem with doing that is sometimes if the trap dries up, then you might get that little bit of odor. So, you know, there's pros and cons on that. Plus, you're not allowed to mix storm and sanitary. Okay, they do a dye test. They're never going to find that on a dye test. But they'll find gutters if you connect your gutters to the sanitary. Like a lot of cities, they do dye testing to make sure you don't intermingle the two, because that costs you and me a lot of money at the treatment plant. And so the sub pump is the way to go with the sealed lid. And a sub pump's kind of nice if your basement floods, and it can help control that.
But you talk about maintaining a sump pump, which I know you need to replace the pumps. But have you ever cleaned a pump out?
I don't have a sub pump, but
if you did,
if I did, of course, what I would do with a sub pump, they tell you got to check it every month. Well, you want to make sure the thing works, okay? And over time, 8-9 years, I'd probably replace a sub pump because I don't know if it's going to work like it's supposed to on a day it floods. So I would make sure sub pumps 5-8 years max. 2, I would test it every once in a while when I'm downstairs. I would dump water in it, okay, and then to clean the pit because it gets nasty. So you know what? This is bad, but throw a little bleach in there. Not a lot. 5% solution kills all the bacteria. Put some water in it, clean it out. Hey, it's
and then it's going to go into eventually the creeks, the lakes, and
maybe
streams.
Yeah.
But that's the only thing that's going to kill all the bacteria in that sump pump. You're not taking everything
vinegar.
out. Vinegar.
You can do vinegar.
You could do vinegar.
Baking soda.
But that is probably something I have never heard anyone doing, and I've never done it. And I've been in my house for going on 28 years. Never have done it. Never thought about doing it. But if you think about all the nasty stuff that keeps going in, the sediment, the rainwater.
Think about it. It's dark, it's humid, it has food. Food meaning dust, because dust accumulates. There you go. There's your mold. Mold needs those three things. Get rid of one of those three, no more mold, no more odors.
So if I went and I actually cleaned it up and then had Ari come and seal me up, I'd probably replace my pump and my backup, seal it up again. But I am on the 5-year plan, whether it needs it or not. I just think that the $800 to $1,000 you're going to spend replacing sump pumps is much cheaper than the aggravation you're going to go through if your basement floods. That's something I want to go through.
There's a forensic observation you can make too. So if you're buying a house, you want to see how far you are downstream for the treatment plant, okay? And so if you're close to the treatment plant, everything goes downhill, and so if they build new developments way uphill, all new developments, they're going to all be dropping that into the sewers, right? So now you've got more flow going to that treatment plant. You're downstream. So if something happens at that treatment plant, you're flooding because you're the lowest man on. So you're on higher ground in a city. You have a less chance of it failing. But here's another problem. You're in a new development, okay? I do forensics and I do a lot of expert witness work. So I've had developments where you go to the development and they want to sue the builder. And you come out because your client called you. And all of a sudden you see like furniture at 20 people's homes in their front yard. You're like, oh man, who screwed up here? Then you realize where the treatment plant's at in this new development. Maybe they added a couple more sections of development, but they didn't add in for the flow, and so the main branch line going out might not be big enough, right? So then when it rains, or during a storm, they get a lot more water and it can't flow out, and so. That's what those retention tanks are for. You know that, right? You ever go to developments? You see those?
I have 6 in my subdivision.
Those are for that purpose alone, to stop that from happening. And so a lot of times it's also under-designed, in a development or under-designed at the city. Or are we getting off this question of yours? Kind of way out there.
We're way out there, but that's okay. We'll bring you back. That's okay.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
I tend to like, bing.
Imagine that. So I'm going to get off topic. And for a second, I don't know if you'll remember this, but I just popped in my head, and we should do a play on this, and we'll brainstorm afterwards. You and I did something after all these inspections. I said, Marko, will you come to my house and just check out all this stuff in my home? I want to see what I'm doing. And we went around, and you were doing – I think you did tell me you got to seal the sump pump. We were – checking outlets for stuff that I was wasting energy on. Then you'd shut a door, and you were I think it was negative pressure that was going through my house that was opening up, and you'd put a piece of toilet paper under my door.
That's my invention.
Do you remember this?
Yeah,
and we would go
yeah.
through, and you were just changing so many things I did in my house. You were talking about all my can lights because I had just an ungodly amount of can lights. The only thing that I did is do you like the newer can lights that are all self-contained, closed, that you don't have? Do you not like those?
Those
they're better than what
they're called insulated. And the only other issue with those, and they're very efficient. They got the LEDs in them. But if you read my chapter on light bulbs, LEDs aren't good for you.
Right, I know
but
that.
I'm not going to trash the world, okay? But the new can lights are called. They're insulated can lights. They don't have as much heat. You don't have as much thermal bridging. You don't have as much thermal bypass.
Right, that's what I was getting at. That was the word.
And so yes, and the toilet paper. The whole idea, and people could do this themselves. You could hire somebody to show up with a blower door. Remember those days everyone's coming around and pay them like $800, or turn on your furnace or air conditioner, go to your top step, take a piece of toilet paper, put it on the bottom door. That thing starts going. That means you've got negative pressure in your basement. Mm-hmm. That means you might have, if you're like in one of these areas where radon is high, you got high radon for sure. You're sucking moisture out of your sump pump if it isn't sealed. You're sucking gases out of your basement becomes this suction machine. And then the upstairs is blowing because it's equilibrium. One's going to suck, one's going to blow. And then if your upstairs is blowing like a balloon, and your attic access panel isn't sealed, or your pull down stairs don't have weather stripping, or you got those bad can lights that have a lot of thermal bypass, or whatever, okay, holes in your attic, then that hot air goes in your attic, A, causes ice dams, B, causes that mold we talked about. And so you want to balance your pressure. How do you do it? Okay, we can cheat. Don't close your doors in your house. Leave them open.
Leave them open.
Yeah, because most are a lot of.
But it's so common where people they think it's going to be better for their furnace or air conditioning. Let me shut the doors if no one's in these bedrooms. Terrible.
Absolutely not.
Worst thing you can do.
Absolutely not. And I've had forensic cases where people call me, my house is dusty. I always clean it. The cleaning lady, look, it's dusty again. 3 days later, I go to the house, and I'm just like, okay, I got to, I'm charging these people $200-300. I'm like, I already saw the problem. I go, let me just do some stuff for an hour, and then I'll give them the bad news. I could have given the bad news instantly. And I go into, there's a fireplace, and they burn wood, okay? And then what they do is they close the door, and the only cold air you turn on the whole first floor is in that room. So where do you think the air comes from when the furnace kicks on? It's sucking it back down the chimney. Once that fire burns down and your draft changes, okay, the stack effect changes, then all of a sudden the dust from the fireplace ash gets sucked into the house. And it goes into the cold air return. And if there wasn't a filter there, a dirty filter went through the house. And so that's return air is important. These new builders today, I go to these houses. I mean, I do these. I bet I do one a month, and like they're building them out east now. And you go in these homes, there ain't no cold air returns. They have these little vents above the doors. They're just passive vents. They take the door, they cut a hole in the ceiling, and put 2 vents on it. That's it. And then there's only one cold air return in the hallway and a second floor. Sometimes one in a master bedroom, and there's only one on a first floor. And the first floors are bigger, open spaces. So 2 things happen. One, you have to scream in these homes because they're so loud because there's not enough cold air returns. B, you're still getting some of the airflow because they put what's called passive vents. All these new houses, you know why? Because it costs money to add cold air return ductwork. So if you're building 1,000 homes and you remove all the ductwork except for one stem that goes up the main wall, one cold air return in the first floor, one else. And sometimes there's one that jumps. I call them jumpers, and they go into the master rooms. But the 2 other bedrooms that don't have them, so they cut holes. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. They are cost cutting. This is a cost cutting thing, but it doesn't necessarily create a balanced thing. So opening doors are good. The door to the basement, maybe change it to a louver door. And another thing, in the basement, you could go look at your cold air returns and seal those and open supply ducts to pressurize the basement. And then, of course, if you don't have a sub pump cover, you're going to suck the moisture and odors right out of it, so get an RE radon cover on it.
My thing when we fixed mine is I was big on shutting every door. And that's one simple thing that we did is keep these doors open, keep the basement door open, and you didn't see it anymore. So I'm going to go back and get you back on track.
All right.
Let's go on fixing your home.
Okay.
Let's go through Marko's home and how Marko fixed your home.
Well,
made it healthy, making it healthy.
So I think we covered a lot of that. The asbestos to lead. We did an interior waterproofing system.
If you know that you see it in an asbestos home that is still encapsulated, nothing has been changed, like no damage, no cracks in any kind of tile. Any of the wrapping insulation is intact. Do you have it removed or leave it?
There's certain friable air conditions, like the old floor tiles. You know what? Leave them alone. Cover them. Okay, the old floor tiles.
It's so common.
Yeah. Then a lot of the plaster mud had asbestos in it. So what? We're not sanding our walls. Some of the ductworks with the white tape. So what? That's not becoming friable.
Leave it.
And asbestos roof, shingles. Well, we don't see much of that out in the country. They have them. Okay, if you're taking water off your roof and drinking it, okay, that's a problem. Asbestos siding. If you drill holes into it, it's a problem. Those you basically have to remove that to send it to a lab. Back to the house. Hydronic heating system's a different ball game. These are your boilers. Now that piping if you have a wet basement, like in Shaker Heights, Cleveland Heights area gets humid basements, then that stuff gets heavy and it becomes friable. Yeah, you got to clean. You got to fix that. Asbestos in the attic, vermiculite.
The insulation.
Yeah, it's a problem, But unfortunately, it's hard. I think you have to remove it. That's big money. And then asbestos. There's some. I would say friable hydronic insulation for sure. Insulation for sure to worry about. The rest of it you got to worry about, but just be smart about it.
When you talked about water, I've only had a couple situations where I've seen this. The whole home could have copper piping and the main line's copper, but it goes out to the main line to the house goes out to the street, and the street's got a lead pipe.
Yeah.
I cannot believe that I have been seeing more and more of this.
There's still a lot of it.
As a homeowner, unless the city is ripping all that up and replacing the main water lines, you're living with that. Am I correct?
Yeah, what happens is a lot of the city lines have been replaced, okay? But a lot of the branches that come from the street to your house are still lead, mostly in old homes. And what happens with that is called stagnation. That's why the water treatment plants put chemicals into the water we drink. And those chemicals are designed to coat the lead pipes, okay? And they coat the pipes, and then they put more chemicals in. They put in chlorine to kill the bacteria, and then they put in fluoride because they think it's going to fix our teeth, okay, or help our teeth. So you're getting all these chemicals, and you're drinking these chemicals. So a lot of those are coated. But what happens is, depending on the water, the pH of the water, and stagnation means you go to bed, and in the middle of the night you get up to make baby food. You're going to get lead from the brass fitting in your fixture. You're going to get lead from the solder joints in old house because it's sitting there, and that first gallon of water's got lead in it, and you're going to make baby food with it. Okay, so you need to run the water a minute or two to clear the lead out, and then once the water starts, in the city the water's always running. There's not as much stagnation, so sure it picks up a little bit of lead, and they add in enough chlorine and enough chemicals to lower that molarity as it comes, through your faucet. So what you want to do, just don't drink that water. And I don't. Like, for example, I have 3 types of water in my Lakewood house. One, I have poison city water, okay? I use that for dishes. I bathe in it. I hate to say it, okay? Because I don't have them. I just have this at one sink. Then the next one, I have a DI tank. And there's different types of filtration. That particular tank removes everything. So when you take a particle count of the water from the city, it's always like 180 parts per million of something, okay? And my water that goes to the DI tank is 0. So I'm basically drinking distilled water, except for the new problem, which is tritium radiation and medication, because we're all medicated. We can't take the medication out. So our water's becoming more medicated every year. Okay. So we can't take that out and won't pick it up. And then my third filter is a high pH filter. I add nutrients to increase the pH to make it 9.0. So that's my coffee. That's my cooking. Okay. And then I drink the 0.0 because that pulls contaminants out of my body. I have gout, so that pulls the contaminants out. And then I also, for my family, I have a bottle of nutrients. You could buy it at Whole Foods, just like $40. You would take a glass of that water, 0.0. It's worthless water. It's got nothing in it. And you put nutrients back into it, and then you drink it. Nutrients, you could read them in a bottle. It lasts a year or 2 years, $40, $50. And so if you're going to drink water, cook with water, treat it and filter it. And there's different ways you can do this. How do we get on the water thing?
I asked you about the lead.
Oh, sorry. See?
I asked you about the lead. If that was a common thing.
Sorry about that.
No. That's fine. But so you don't use just the city water.
No.
Oh my goodness.
And like I have another house I stay at because I've been taking care of Mom. She's 88. I take care of her. There's no stairs at this house. It's up in here, and that's my cottage, I guess you can call it. And there I have stupid city water. And so what I do there is, this is bad, but I go through 2 gallons a day to 3 gallons. So I just go to the store and buy, gallons of water that's treated. Now, I do go to, there's a place out in Sheffield where they have wells.
I've
and
heard about
it
this.
costs you 25 cents per gallon. So you want to do is collect.
I've heard about
You
that
want to
place.
collect glass containers, those old wine gallon containers. Keep those. And it's just a lot more work. So
I just have a filter on my fridge, and I drink a lot of bottled water, but I haven't had any issues with the water, thank God. But now you're making me nervous. So let's get
I
off.
have a book called
Oh,
"The
no.
Water You're Drinking May Be Killing You." It's on
God.
Amazon.
Oh,
Don't
no.
read it.
Don't read it?
Don't read that
I
book.
don't want to.
Don't read that book.
Okay. So let me go back to fixing our house. We've taken care of, like, we're not using humidifier. We know what we're doing if we have any of this asbestos, and we're making sure we don't have mold in our attic. We're taking care of, make sure the foundation's good, no leaks. Let's talk about other things that you could do. If you do have a lot of carpet, you're a big fan of HEPA vacuums that have HEPA filters on it if you use that, correct? Are you a fan of room filtration systems, the portable ones you could put and you use HEPA system? It's a HEPA filters with them. Does that do anything for you?
Absolutely. And I have a thing. It's called it's a really cool piece of equipment. It's called a laser particle counter. And my model has 6 channels, 0.1 all the way to 5 microns. And so I go to these things you're talking. Now, there's some cheap ones. The ones that are $800-900, they're great. And I go to those things and I put my particle counter, my laser particle counter up front, and I'm getting 5, 20, 40, 60, 50 on the charts. And then I go to the back end after the filtration, and 0, 0, 0, 0. Okay, it's cleaning the air. My gauge is telling me this. Now, sometimes it's worse, and that's because they haven't changed their filters. And some of these things, like the cheap ones, the late night ones they sell on TV, I wouldn't be buying those. Okay, you're wasting your money. If you're going to waste electricity to clean a room, and that's not bad. Let's say you have a pet that's in your bedroom with you. Well, you might want one of those in there, okay? Because it'll pick up the skin fragments, and then and what happens is also the dust mites create fecal pellets, and those break down into microscopic floatable particulate. It'll pick that up, okay? That's the stuff that, it's a part of our house. All our dust in our homes have a fingerprint. It's a DNA finger. Your dust in your house is completely different than anybody else's dust on this planet. That's your fingerprint of your dust. Now, it could be, the way you live, what you cook, what you eat. You got this kind of furniture. You got this kind of dog, this kind of cat. You do work in the garage. All these things create a fingerprint of dust. And so that machine will get rid of any dust. They're expensive. Let's say you have a chinchilla or your kid wants to have a mouse or some kind of reptile. Well, maybe that's a good room to put that in. Okay? So, yeah, they work great. They're expensive.
Okay. I like that. I'm a big fan of those.
Yeah.
I have them on each floor. And the reason I know they work is, one, the amount of dust that's in my house. Way, not a lot of dust. And when you open up the filters, if you change them on a regular basis, you're just like, holy cow. How about something as simple as changing your filter for your furnace?
Oh, yeah.
It's simple stuff, right?
Yeah.
Are you a big fan of having your ducts cleaned?
Oh, yeah.
How often should you do that?
I think the duct cleaning, like your house, probably not as often because you've got all these other mechanisms in place. But other houses, it could be every 3 years. Other houses, every 10 years.
If you do a big project, you probably should do it if you're
Well, if you have a project, you need to seal everything off with plastic because you want to contain the dust that you create. So you got to break up your rooms and put plastic. Not that it's, space cleaning, mold cleanup job. It's just the dust. You want to control your dust. So if you're sanding or cutting, I do a lot of homes where the people have like internet businesses in their basements and they make birdhouses or welcome signs, and I go down there and they got all this sawdust. I'm like, Okay.
Yeah.
That's a problem, And so you have back to a question we had a long time ago. Yes, you got to go in your house and see what's going on and use some common sense. If you got a sawdust operation in your basement, you're not going to worry about HEPA vacuum filtration devices in all your bedrooms. You're going to figure out your problem in your basement first.
Mm-hmm.
If you cut one arm off and it's bleeding and you got a scratch on this arm, which one are you fixing first? You're not going to go get a Band-Aid. You're going to put a turnip. You're going to stop the bleeding, right?
Other tips from Marko. Talked about the HEPA filters. We talked about the HEPA vacuums that you could be using. You are not a huge fan, or maybe you are and you just are, maybe you practice what you preach or you don't practice what you preach, but you're not a big fan of using Mr. Clean and Pine Sol and Clorox. You are not a fan of using all that because of the damage that it does to your immune system, to you,
lungs,
your
everything.
Breathing.
Oh yeah.
So me that thinks, wow, I'm killing all the germs in my house. It smells clean because I like that. I equate that's a clean bathroom, and you think that you're really just doing damage to yourself.
Think about this scenario. You got a nice wood table, and you spray it with lemon pledge. It's all shiny. And your guests come over, and all of a sudden Mom opens up her purse, and she's got a little 2-year-old, and she throws a handful of Cheerios on the desk, on the table. What's that kid eating?
He's eating the
Besides really bad food.
The pledge and any other thing that's on.
Okay, think about that just for a minute, and you could extrapolate that to everything. Okay, you're cleaning the house, and you've been cleaning and washing with vinegar and mold, or not vinegar. Let's just say bleach and ammonia, and let's say you're a smoker. And then you go outside and have a cigarette. What are you doing? You open a piece of gum and you put it in your mouth. What are you doing? Right, exactly.
Nothing. It's not.
It's on your fingers.
You smell.
So that's direct poisoning your body. Then you have indirect poisoning in your body. The fumes and the VOCs that you breathe. And then you have certain chemicals like reactively with other chemicals. They're incompatible and they cause problems. So I would say that's why we're all sick. I mean, we're sick from chemicals. This is not in this book. A guy wrote another book called Forever Chemicals. Okay. Do you know that 97% of us have PFAS chemicals in our bodies?
I'm not even sure I know what that is.
PFAS. Okay. PFAS is now a term used for these chemicals have what's called the fluoride carbon bond. Everything has it. Okay. And you can't break up that bond. And that stuff doesn't decompose. So where's PFAS? Oh, paper plates. You cut a paper plate, you just ate PFAS. You get a plastic spoon, more PFAS. The water you drink, plastic bottle, PFAS.
I've never heard that term before,
look
but
it
I know
up.
about.
Look it up.
I know about how people are all down on plastics and.
Oh no, you're going to
plastics.
hear in the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to see this PFAS thing go crazy, and it's going to be the next thing.
After reading 2 books of yours and going through my house, and I think you know me well enough that I am a bit of a hypochondriac, this can scare the living hell out of you because we go outside, the sun's killing us, sun poisoning, skin cancer. You go in your house, you have all these germs that you're competing with. Doesn't that just make your immune system stronger doing all this stuff?
No, it depends. Okay, we ate dirt as children. I got it. Yeah, of course that made our immune system stronger as we were kids. Okay, we weren't bathed every day. Okay, sure, but our bodies aren't designed for chemicals. They're not designed for electromagnetics. They're not designed for poisons. mercury. You're never going to get immune to mercury or lead. Okay, sure, you're going to get immune to some dust. Okay, maybe we'll slow down our asthma rates. Okay, but when you overkill, it's a whole different ballgame. And by the way, any book you read can scare you. Okay, not just this book. But here's the thing: if you could read this, and you don't have to read my book, read somebody else's book, and you could and stop 20% of what's out there. Just think that can make you live just a little bit longer. Remember the first book? Fix your toxic home and live longer. That was the concept of that book. Just do some of this stuff.
Well, and that's what was going to be my follow-up is not everyone would do everything. It's picking and choose, and that's kind of what I was getting at with you is like I know what I would have done and would do, but I was looking for you, like these are the must that you need to do these things.
You know, and we talked a lot of them, but another, like, for example, like, you know, let's say you read this book and there's a section that said, don't go on your roof when there's ice and chip at it in the middle of winter with a 30-foot ladder, and because you're going to fall and die. Okay. So you read this, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the only thing you read in the book. And then next winter, there's ice in your gutter. You're like, oh no, I'm not going up that ladder and dying. So think about that. And unless you didn't read it, you went up there and you did die. So every little bit helps in our lives.
Sure.
And if you could just pick, and you don't have to do it all. It's impossible. Remember I told you I could still be the painter with peeling paint at my house. That doesn't mean I'm, bad at taking care of my home. It just means I'm not doing all of it because you can't.
You can't. I mean,
No.
it's.
But if you do some.
What I think that you appeal to is it appeals to people that live in different parts of the country. When you talk about a lot of the, and we don't have to cover this because it's people that live in a country area with farm animals and lots of stuff like different livestock. You talk about if you live next to in a high tension wire areas. So I think it appeals to everyone. I know the things that I have done, but the thing that I still come away with this is fresh air.
Oh,
fresh air.
Open your window.
Open your damn windows.
Unless, of course.
I don't. April, I can't open my windows. It's brutal.
And don't buy a house next to a chemical plant.
And,
because you're going to breathe chemicals, right? I mean, what about all those poor people? And I like writing books. I'm working on another book. And like all these people that live near garbage dumps. And they wonder why the brain cancers are high because they have wells and stuff's leaching. But what about the people at Love Canal, okay? They built a school over a canal that was never built, and a canal is full of dioxin chemicals from the chemical plant. All these kids are sick and dying, okay? And then you have these Superfund sites, so because you made a comment about don't buy your house here and there. So when you open a window, make sure the place you're opening a window at is a safe place, too. You do your homework. I mean,
well, I didn't say don't buy a house.
Yeah.
I said that this book appeals to different people that would have homes in different parts of the country.
Totally.
So there's it covers everything you can do. And as I was reading it, I kind of made my notes. Well, here's stuff that I do, and here's stuff that I don't do. And the one that I told you is it's never going to change me not to use crazy chemical products.
A lot of people,
I'll always do that. Have cut down a lot on floral room.
Oh, plug-in fresheners?
You're not a fan of those, they're right?
No, they got phthalates in them. That's
pure
poison.
I
a lot of people get sick with those.
I
get sick.
I have known people that have had to take them out because they're getting bad headaches. They're nosebleeds. So I bought into that. There's so many other things in here. The one thing that I think freaks people out, and I know how common it is, but people freak out if they have mice in their house, and it's so common.
They got to live somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, mice are everywhere. And we actually, you did some on our make my house fixing it up. This is 20 years ago. I had what I thought was a mice infestation. It was one or two mice that they can make a mess of your house. And you think, oh, my God, look at all this mouse droppings. I have mice everywhere. Well, it wasn't the case. What we did is you came over and we went to the sides of each J channel of my corner of my siding.
Oh.
And we stuck
Aluminum.
Wool.
Yeah, steel wool.
Steel wool. We flooded it with steel wool.
Oh, yeah.
Then I sealed it with this whatever you told me to buy, good stuff for mice. We did the AC line.
Oh, the
covered that
penetration
up.
through the wall?
We went through any little crack and we
No more
sealed
mice?
everything up. And then on everywhere. Then there was stuff on I think some of my on the roof on the undersiding. They were coming through here,
through
so I had to,
soffits,
through
overhangs.
soffits. I had to fix that, and then I had the exterminator come by, and there were two mice, and they probably make all that much of a problem. So I get it still checked all the time. I'm sure I have a mouse or two, but just doing that simple thing changed it. And it was, you were so kind to do it, but
I know
huge.
that a lot of people, I'm going to say 75% of homes have mice.
Okay, I thought it was higher, but
Let's just use that as a number. It could be higher. Well, but most of those homes, people don't know it because they don't see the droppings in their home. Because guess what? The mice aren't living in their home. They're living in the attic.
in the attic.
And so what happens is these mice, and if you got an acorn tree, you're in trouble.
Really?
Oh, yeah, you're in trouble. Because you're going to have a mouse haven. Like a lot of those homes, the Schmidt homes, a lot of acorn trees up in Strongsville, they got so many mice, they don't even know it. What they do is they bring the acorns up, so they don't need your food. These mice got their own food. And they live up in the attic in the winter, and they live and they run and they destroy your insulation. Because as mice run their runways, they urinate. So, they hurt the R value. They cause sometimes stuffy odors. And two mice can produce hundreds of mice by the end of the season. Okay? It doesn't take them long before they're fertile. And they make a lot of mice, and they're not getting killed up there. And then they leave.
But if you're not being proactive and trying to stop this, is this going to cause you down the road? If it could cause a problem.
I'll tell you what. I've seen people make insurance claims on damaged insulation from wildlife, and including mice. Squirrels for sure.
Raccoons.
And usually the ones with the squirrels have a lot of mice too, and a raccoon. So I've seen people make claims. I've seen not most. It freaks out people, and that's a kind of a problem for home inspectors. So the home inspectors, they're not going to look in the attic and say, "Oh, look, there's mouse holes in your insulation," because that's going to cause all kind of problems. So the home inspectors, they're not there for that, so they're not going to say anything about it. But if you know that 75% of homes have it, you can go check yourself. And what you could do, I hate to say it, but throw poison up there, okay? And then do exactly what you did. Go on YouTube or call Marko or somebody. Call Marko with a question. It costs you $30 if you do that. So you look it up on YouTube, go seal everything, throw some poison up there, and guess what? You'll be that 25% that don't have it, and you'll stop your insulation from getting destroyed.
I was amazed that simple stuff took 25 minutes to do, and it really did make a huge difference. See, I listen to you. Having a healthy home for infants, little kids.
And elders, sure.
And elders.
A lot of people never think about it. They think the house is safe. Maybe it's not safe, okay? For example, let's say you have kids, toddlers, and you want to hide the popcorn, and you stick it above the stove. The kid knows it's up there, and you don't think he's going to learn how to get up there, but then he realizes if he opens up the stove, he could stand on the stove and reach up there and get the popcorn. Well, guess what? If you don't have an anti-tipping device on that stove, that thing's going to flip over and kill your kid, okay? Anti-tipping device is very important in homes on stoves. Every
Every stove has one.
They sell them,
but
nobody
don't
knows
they come with them?
Yeah, they just don't know what they're for.
They're just not. Nobody installs them.
Yeah, whenever you do home inspections, and I always find them in one of the drawers. Like, they didn't put that up. Okay, so safety. Another thing people never think about. The guy reads books, right? And all of a sudden they have a bunch of kids, and he's got this bookshelf, and it's like, it's climbable, and if it's not fastened to the wall, it's going to come down on a kid. He's going to climb up there to get something. Fasten your bookshelves, fasten your furniture to the wall, and TVs, same thing. Those TVs now they hang, and they're getting lighter, but they can still hurt you. Filing cabinets, filing cabinets. If your drawer is filled on top and you open it, that thing's going to come down and break your hip. So furniture is huge. Okay, electrical, extension cords. Get rid of that. Just get rid of extension cords. If you need extension cords, put outlet in. And then your outlets, they should be grounded, okay, or at least if not two-prong, so check your grounds, your polarities, and you got to have GFIs. The stairs, obviously, they have to be the same size, the risers, because if your risers are the wrong size, then you have unfamiliar stepping conditions, so check your stairs. Usually the old house basement stairs are messed up. Outside stairs are messed up. So we're talking handrails here. And then like, don't put carpets on your steps going to the third floor because they get loose and you fall from that. So you got to put treads on there. So you always think about slipping conditions, falling conditions. If you got older people in the home and you got to put up grab bars. I mean, how are they going to get up off the shower thing? They're going to grab something, right? So you want to check that out. And then as far as other safety, now you might want to think about plumbing. So do we have backflow preventers, things like that? Mm-hmm. Safety would be the dryer vent. People never clean their dryer vents.
Oh, my goodness.
And I mean, you know how many fires start from dryer vents? Or the dryer vent's too long, and that causes high indoor humidity. Dryer vents are huge, huge. Incomplete combustion. You got to have carbon monoxide detectors and they measure to lower quantities of CO. So they'll go off at like 25 and 20 parts, per million.
Carbon monoxide detectors?
Carbon monoxide detectors. The ones you buy go off at 70 after a 4-hour exposure, so you can still get low-level carbon monoxide poisoning. So you want to also check your furnaces every year. If you got an old furnace, do combustion analysis where they put a computer in and they make sure that that you got proper gas regulation, that they have proper makeup air, that you don't have dirty orifices in your burners. There's like 10 things that cause high CO. So you want to do combustion analysis, and you want to check the draft of your water heater, make sure it doesn't downdraft when the furnace kicks on, because sometimes they're connected together. So you want to check for carbon monoxide, maybe have low-level carbon monoxide detectors, obviously smoke detectors. That's a no-brainer. And then then you could start thinking about more things. Once you take care of that's the bleeding cut off arm. Once you fix that, then you think about the cut on the other arm, and then we could worry about moving chargers from beds and all that kind of stuff. But so children and elderly safety, very important.
Very important. Okay, to summarize, I want to leave the listeners with this. If a home buyer could only make 3 changes to improve their home or their brand new home, what would you tell them to do? If they were going to make 3 changes, the 3 most important, what would that be in your mind?
I would say control humidity. So whether you do it on some of the things we talked about, or run a dehumidifier, seal sub pumps, not use ventless heaters are very bad for fireplaces, and fix the humidity, control the humidity, and stick with the proper humidity for the proper temperature and season, number 1. 2, I would say air, fresh air, oxygen, clean oxygen. How do we get it? Well, you can get it a lot of different ways. You can do it. We talked about HEPA filtration. We talked about HEPA vacuum cleaners. We talked about opening windows, right? Okay. And, and by the way, common sense should be part of all these 3 things. Mm-hmm. And I think the other last thing, and that should be a bigger picture, would be chemicals. Now, there would be chemicals in the water, chemicals in the food, chemicals in our cleaning solutions, chemicals that outgas from building products. And so we got to look at chemicals. So moisture, clean air, chemicals.
I will say this: the chemicals and cleaning products is a huge movement. I just haven't caught on to it yet.
You
But
will.
I know it's huge, and I know it's going away. But those are 3 fantastic tips. I would definitely recommend any homeowner, current, new, or thinking about it. I would buy this book. I definitely listen to this
Or the
podcast.
other one, right?
Or the other book. I like them both. I enjoy the first one because I love your stories.
Yeah.
I think the stories are fantastic. And some of them I felt like I've known some of the stories. But this is more of like the here you go. This is what you need to do. These are the instructions.
Mm-hmm.
They're both fantastic books. Do you think you'll follow up to this?
Oh yeah, I've actually. The more books I write, the better my writing gets. So obviously, as you read them, they're going to get better and better. Because I never start off as I'm no writer. It's just something I picked up in my older years. But they're getting better.
I think it's amazing that you this is your 5th book.
No, 12.
12? Oh my God.
The book I'm writing now is great. It's I've taken all the books that I've written, and it's a fiction book. And it's crazy because the fiction book is the Anunnaki. It's a fiction book. And they come to Earth to see what they created man back, 400,000 years ago, right? Supposedly. And they're like, what did man do to this planet? So they're going through the whole world. And the book's actually, it's called the 6th extinction event, where we become extinct, like in 250 years, because of all the things we do.
Oh God!
And it's a fiction book.
It's great.
But it's I'm having fun doing it because I already did all the homework.
I'm amazed that you keep doing this, and you took all the knowledge that you learned over the years, and you turned it into a passion project that you're really getting good at it. It reads well. They're entertaining.
I was gonna say
I'd want to do another one, but I want to.
This is what I wrote before this one.
Oh my goodness!
I'm going to give this to you. I want you to read it.
Okay, I love your books.
You're going to love that one.
Marko, let's give you a plug. Author Marko Vovk. How do people get a hold of you if they have questions?
You could just call Marko with a question,
Okay.
with a K, and I have a service for people out of state, and I can help them with their house problems. I have a YouTube channel, Cleveland Marko with a K.
It's fantastic stuff on
10
there.
million views and, over 15 years, 1,400 videos. There's some crazy videos, too, on there. And then I have a lot of Facebook pages, Marko Vovk, and I have a Facebook page for all my books. So if I write my books and I make a Facebook page out of it, so you can get me that way, or just houseinvestigations.com. That's it's kind of an outdated website because I haven't done anything to it in 10 years, but I don't really answer people on that one. But there's some information on that. Google, call Marko with a question.
Marko. I appreciate that you do this, and it's going to get to the point. Maybe your next couple of books, you'll be.
Yeah, I
I'll
don't
have
think
to talk to your agent to get
I
you
don't
on
think
here.
so. You know how many books there are out there today?
But this
Everybody's
is good
writing
stuff,
books,
man. I mean, you took, like I said, you took your passion and you put it out there. If you're in the real estate business and you've never met you, or read one of your books, you'll become a better agent.
It's
you
fun.
just know stuff to advise people.
I have fun writing them.
It's fantastic.
It's a hobby, but
Marko, thank you. This is
hey, thanks for
awesome.
having
It's
me. That was
awesome.
a great time.
Awesome.
I think we kind of shot off at a couple tangents, but
It's okay. Johnny's got a lot of work to do.
it happens.
It happens.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Make sure to follow us on social media at MDV The Blueprint on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. We post a ton of great content. And please don't forget to subscribe to our podcast channel so you never miss out on an episode. Thanks again, and see you next time.